So as the COVID scare once again returns, lots of questions are being asked, and we thought today we'd get someone who's been deeply associated with this fight against COVID for the last couple of years, the country's leading doctor, pulmonologist, former AIIMS director, now with Medanta, Dr. Randeep Guleria. Appreciate your joining us, sir. Good to have you back in a way to once again clear all our FAQs. Let's look at those frequently asked questions. The first one that's coming in, Dr. Guleria, is the most obvious one. Looking at all that's happened in China, other parts of the world, is a fourth wave possible in India, or is that an exaggeration to suggest we could have another wave?
So there are two parts of this. One is, are we going to see more cases, or are we going to see a wave with more hospitalization and deaths? I think what we may see is increase in number of cases with mild illness, but I don't think that we're going to see an increase in hospitalization or deaths, because we have our immunity is high, and we've already seen that this variant causes more of upper respiratory tract involvement and doesn't lead to pneumonia like we saw with the Delta wave. So we may have increase in number of cases, but no increase in hospitalization or deaths.
You know, that's reassuring in a way. What you're saying is more infections possibly, but not hospitalizations, particularly like we saw in the first two waves. Therefore, the next question that's coming to you, Doctor, our frequently asked question is BF7 or BF.7. The variant has been here since July. There are at least 4 cases that have been detected. Is this the one that can trigger a wave, or is it much like Omicron, a sub-variant which will increase infections but will not result in major hospitalizations?
So I think that what we've seen is, and as you rightly said, that this variant has been in India for quite some time, but we've not seen an increase in hospitalization or deaths. We may have had an increase in number of cases, but there is a lot that we don't know, because a large number of people are not coming forward and getting tested. So we may say that the number of positive cases in our country is low, but it's possible that there are people who have a flu-like illness, a mild illness. They think it could be COVID, they think it could be just common flu, and they just take symptomatic treatment and don't get tested. Or many people do an RT-PCR, do a rapid antigen test, and it turns out to be positive, but they don't report it or don't do a RT-PCR test, and therefore we don't know the exact number of people who are there with mild illness. So it's possible that we may have had number of people who've had a flu-like illness, a mild illness, they recovered on their own, they didn't have to go to hospital, and they were not picked up. So we may have had cases, but like I said, we're not seeing more hospitalization, we're not seeing more deaths, despite the fact that this new variant has been around for some time. But having said that, there's always a concern that when you have a new variant which is circulating, and there are increasing number of cases as we're seeing in China, could that lead to mutations going one step more and new variants emerging? We know that when these variants infect people whose immunity is low, they can stay in the body for a long time, and they will then evolve, and we may develop new variants which may be variants of concern.
Right, but that's for the future. For now, what you're saying is, in a way, no need to panic. Therefore, I come to the third question, because today Karnataka is the first state, Dr. Guleria, which has said that they will ask for mandatory masking in all indoor venues. Should wearing mask be mandatory? I'm taking a flight tomorrow. Should I be wearing a mask on the flight?
So I think it's a good option to wear a mask, and I personally feel that masks not only protect you against COVID, but other respiratory viral infections which we see during the winter months. They also give you good protection against air pollution if you're coming from a place like Delhi. So wearing a mask, therefore, is not something that is bad. It's something that one should encourage. But should we make it mandatory? I'm not sure, because even when we do make it mandatory, many people still don't follow it. So I think it's important to increase public awareness, to make people realize the importance of wearing a mask in general, and that should help. And I think that would be the way forward.
Okay, so in a way what you're saying is it's a good idea to wear a mask, and therefore whether it's mandatory or not, wear a mask as far as possible is what you're saying. Is a 4th dose of the vaccine needed? I took a dose, Dr. Guleria, my booster in the first half of this year. Should I be taking a 4th dose? Is that really needed?
So this is something that we need to have more data on. We don't have enough data to say what is the current situation in terms of our immunity. It would be logical to think that after a year it may be worthwhile to take another booster. But the issue is the booster as effective as it was in the past against the new variants? Or do we need to change our vaccine strategy in terms of now a new vaccine which covers for the circulating strain? So I think we need more data, but at some point in time, I think one would need to take another booster, whether it's early next year or later on. We need to collect data on that, and also data on what booster would be more useful considering the current circulating variants as far as COVID is concerned.
So should we wait for a upgraded vaccine? Is that what you're suggesting, that there's no urgency to go in for a booster?
Yes, so if you've already taken a booster, there's no urgency to take another booster, but I think we should also do good quality research to see what is the current status of the efficacy of the current vaccines, and do we need to develop a new vaccine which covers the circulating strain and is more effective and would be more useful as we do for influenza every year.
So is a vaccine plus natural immunity strong enough, doctor? The fact that I've taken 2 doses, I took my booster, natural immunity now strong enough?
So what it seems likely in India is that a large number of people have had the vaccine, and along with that they have got natural immunity because a large number of people have had exposure to Omicron or other variants of COVID, and therefore the combination of natural infection along with the vaccine possibly gives you a good long-lasting immunity, and that's why I think we are in a little better position than, let's say, countries like China.
Okay, that's reassuring. Since you're speaking on China, your sense, doctor, is what we are seeing at the moment China specific? What we've seen happening in the last couple of weeks, this surge in China, is it very China specific? Therefore, we in India are relatively protected, insulated.
So I think that this is China specific, and for 3 broad reasons. One is China focused on a zero COVID policy. What that meant was that they did not allow the virus to spread. Even if they had a few cases that had mild COVID, they would clamp down and have a very aggressive lockdown. So that was good in the early days, but what it really led to subsequently was that you had a large part of your population which was never exposed to the virus and in a way was naive to the virus, and you had no antibodies against the virus, even if the virus had the chance of causing mild infection. Secondly, we are not, a large number of the population there has not got the vaccine. The data suggests that even the older age group, the vaccine uptake has been low, and even in people with comorbidities. So that is another factor which is a problem as far as China is concerned. And thirdly, since it's a locally made vaccine which has not been evaluated at an international platform, we are not sure what is the efficacy of the vaccine. So if we combine all of these 3 factors, along with the fact that you have a new variant, BF.7, which is more infectious and spreads rapidly, then this is what is happening in China. You have a population which has not been exposed to the virus. You have a variant which is spreading very rapidly, and this is leading to a large number of cases. And as the cases spread to people who are whose immunity is compromised or who are elderly, then that can lead to more hospitalizations.
Let's come back again for a moment to vaccines, because the next question is, should mixing of vaccines be allowed? I took 2 doses of Covishield. Next time, should I be looking to take another vaccine? This is a question that's been asked often, even in the past.
So if we look at the data suggests that heterologous vaccination, that is when you combine or mix and match your vaccines, the immune response is better and you get a better protection as far as COVID is concerned. In the past, it was not being encouraged by many countries because you needed that many doses of the other vaccine to be available to be able to provide that to your population. So that is why most countries followed the same schedule, because that was what was available. But now there is enough vaccines available. And therefore, I think it's worthwhile to consider a mix and match as far as vaccines are concerned. Those who have taken Covaxin or Covishield could take the Cobravax vaccine, or you could also mix and match as far as Covishield or Covaxin is concerned. The data does suggest that it gives better immunity. Even the study from ICMR, which looked at some people who by mistake got the other shot as far as the second dose was concerned, their immune response was much better.
Are nasal vaccines the best option now? I had an epidemiologist a couple of days ago who said, you know, nasal vaccines may be the way forward.
Yes, so nasal vaccines have multiple advantages. One is, of course, they're easy to administer to a large population, and therefore that is something which is very useful. But I think the other important advantage is that they also give mucosal immunity. So when you inject the nasal vaccine into the nose, it also causes an immune reaction and brings the antibodies at the mucosal level in the lining of the nose, and that protects you from the earliest part of the infection. It also decreases the chance of the virus replicating there and causing spreading more rapidly to others. So in the long run, a nasal vaccine which is good, which is shown to be efficacious and safe, may be something which may be better and more useful. But you have to be able to show that data that this is an efficacious and safe vaccine. It would therefore be something that would be the future.
Will taking another vaccine dose prevent long COVID is a question we've been asked. Long COVID is troubling a lot of people, doctor, and then comes this news of this latest COVID scare. How should one deal with it?
So there is a lot of concern about long COVID, and we're still learning some more and more about it. We've been seeing patients who continue to have some symptoms of long COVID even months or a year after they've had COVID. There's also data which suggests that those who've taken the vaccine, especially those who've taken the booster shot, they tend to have less long COVID, and this does give some protection against long COVID. Therefore, I would really urge people who have not taken the booster shot not only to protect themselves from the new variants, but also to have some protection from developing long COVID, to actually take the booster shot, because some data does suggest that it may help or decrease the chance of long COVID.
Okay. Let's come back, doctor, to China and, travel. Because you've got different parts of the world where we've seen a surge: Japan, South Korea, United States, China, of course. Should foreign travel be allowed? We are heading into Christmas and New Year. Should Indians be encouraged to travel abroad, or should we be cautious?
So I think we can't, it wouldn't be practical, and it wouldn't make sense to ban travel completely. One has to be careful, and maybe the high risk group, and especially the elderly, need to be extra careful if they're traveling in terms of COVID appropriate behavior. But we already have data which suggests that the new variants have already present in our country. So therefore, it's not that this is going to be something new which is going to come into our country. The BF.7 has been reported by INSAGOG over the last few months. And we may have even more cases if we did testing and did genome sequencing aggressively, and more people came forward and got themselves tested. Therefore, I think it's not going to make much of a difference even if we sort of ban air travel, because the virus has already entered our country. I would say that we should encourage people to follow COVID appropriate behavior. If they've not taken the booster shot, to take the booster shot. But traveling, having a blanket ban on travel may not actually really serve any purpose.
So which effectively almost answers my next question, which was, is domestic travel also risky? I think the point I'm making, doctor, is that this is a season where there'll be lots of crowds, weddings, holiday season. I'm traveling tomorrow, let me tell you, on my Christmas holidays. Should I be even at all thinking about cancelling it or regulating the kind of parties that I go to?
So what I would really say is that if you have an indoor party, if there is a big crowd, please wear your mask and try and have some degree of social distancing if possible. If it's an outdoor party and it's really a bigger area like a lawn or a garden, then still one is safe because the chance of transmission becomes less. But when you're traveling, it may be a good idea to keep wearing your mask and also to regularly wash your hands. So COVID appropriate behavior is something that we need to do, and I don't think there is a need to really panic. It's not something that we should all cancel our holidays. I think it's been a long time after which one is celebrating New Year by having celebration in the real sense. So I think we are not in a situation to really say that we should stop all of this. Our cases are very low and we're not seeing any admissions as far as hospitals are concerned.
I just also wanted to know, Doctor, if lots of people are getting respiratory ailments, this is that time of the year, should the moment I get a respiratory ailment or get any kind of flu, go and get myself tested for COVID?
Yes, so there are two parts of this. One is a large number of people are getting flu-like symptoms. It may or may not be COVID, because this is the time when you get a lot of respiratory infections, and many a times it's influenza or flu itself. And the treatment by and large remains the same. People just take paracetamol, hydrate themselves, take multivitamins, vitamin C, and they become all right. But I would really say that if you have COVID, don't only rely on the rapid antigen tests, go and get the RT-PCR test done, because that will provide a database to how many people are actually having COVID and what is the variant that is circulating. Currently, we don't know that, because the large number of people are not coming forward and getting the RT-PCR test done. Either they're just taking symptomatic treatment, or they're just getting the rapid antigen test done, and if it's positive, they just isolate themselves, take symptomatic treatment, but don't report it, and therefore we don't really know how many cases are we seeing of COVID during the winter months, how many cases are we seeing of influenza, and what is the variant which is currently circulating in our country, because the number of testing has really come down.
But are you saying, sir, that can an RT-PCR in India detect this BF7 variant clearly? It will detect it without a problem?
The RT-PCR will tell you whether this is COVID or not, but all RT-PCR samples now which are COVID positive go for genome sequencing, and by genome sequencing you will know what is the variant, and you will come to know definitely if it is BF.7.
You know, are heart attacks a long COVID effect? We've seen in recent times, Doctor, people in the age group of 40s, early 50s, very fit otherwise, suffering from heart attacks. They had COVID possibly in the first and second wave. This law, you said that there's not enough data on long COVID, but is that one fear that maybe those who've got long COVID are susceptible to heart trouble?
Yes, that is a cause of concern, and like I said, we need more data. But yes, there are reports of people who've had COVID and a few weeks later have suddenly had a heart attack or dropped, had suddenly collapsed and died of an acute heart attack. It's possible that this could be related to the endothelial or the inflammation in the vessels that COVID causes. Also could be related to the heart muscle involvement that can happen because of the virus. But we need to have more data to really show a cause and effect relationship. Is this definitely a cause, or is it just more incidental? And also, what is the mechanism behind it? And also, can we predict who is at a higher risk for developing this? I would really say that we should also sort of recommend that all people who recover from COVID should be slow in terms of going back to a lot of physical activities, going back to the gym. They need to do it slowly, because it seems to be one of the risk factors that you recovered from COVID and you suddenly start exercising very aggressively, you have a higher chance of developing heart-related issues.
You know, how is BF7 different from Omicron that hit India, and linked to that are lockdowns a possibility? At the start of this year, Doctor, you'll recall there was Omicron, but while it was infectious, there were very few hospitalizations. Do you believe BF7 as a subvariant is following that same path, and to that extent, we are relatively reassured and protected?
Yes, so the BF7 is basically a sublineage of Omicron. It has come from Omicron, and it's been 1 year since we've had Omicron, and what we've seen over the last 1 year is only sublineages which have emerged from Omicron. We have not seen any new other variant coming up like we had in the past, the Alpha, the Beta, the Delta. What we're seeing now is that Omicron has taken over all of these, and we don't see any of these variants, and the sublineages are there. What the data suggests is that these new variants are developing two important mechanisms. One mechanism is what we call that they are becoming more infectious. So Omicron had a R naught of 5. That was, if you had Omicron infection, you could infect 5 people on an average. The new strain, the BF7, has an R naught of 10 to 18, which means that if you have infection with the new strain,
Right.
it is more infectious and it can spread and can infect almost 10 to 18 people. Also, it has a shorter incubation period. You get the infection and symptoms much more earlier. And also, it is developing immune escape mechanism, so that even if you have had COVID in the past or you've had the vaccine, you can still get the infection. But what we're seeing is that these two things are happening, but it's not causing more severe infection, it's not causing more deaths, and this seems to be what happened with the Omicron itself, which has been about a year old. So I think it's behaving like Omicron, but becoming more infectious and spreading more rapidly, and of course, the virus is evolving so that it can still continue to infect people by developing an immune escape mechanism.
So the final word from you, Doctor. I had a doctor from America of Chinese origin who said that we are at halftime. This is semi-final, this is since it's been football fever, that the virus is at halftime at the moment. We don't know what will happen after the half. Is that a good analogy? Or should we be relatively secure that the worst is over?
So in my mind, the worst is over, because unlike what we saw over the last 2 years, we now have a good degree of immunity that mankind has developed either through natural infection or through vaccination. So we have over the last 2 to 3 years evolved in terms of being able to develop immunity against a new virus which hit mankind in 2019 December. At that point in time, we had no immunity against this virus, and we were totally sort of, I would say, vulnerable to this viral infection, and we saw this happening in the waves that we've seen over the last 2 years. But now, because of natural infection, because of vaccination, mankind has good amount of immunity to fight this virus, and therefore we are in a better situation. The only outrider here is how the virus will evolve. If the virus mutates to become another new virus against which we have no immunity, then we may have a problem, but that seems unlikely, and we haven't seen a big change in the last 1 year as far as Omicron is concerned, and therefore I personally feel that we are in a better situation and we've crossed the halfway mark.